Discovery is an important part of any sort of court case. One of the pieces of discovery in the case against Bryan Kohberger is investigative genetic genealogy, otherwise known as IgG evidence. That was just turned over to the defense of Bryan Kohberger this last week. The police used IgG evidence to generate leads, but they say they did not use it to obtain any sort of warrants in this case, making the point somewhat moot, if you will. DNA sample on a knife sheath found at the crime scene was allegedly matched to Kohberger's cheek swab, though. Here to help us make sense of all of that, Laurie Gilbertson, former prosecutor. Laurie, let's talk about IgG evidence and this piece specifically. What does it mean to the case against Kohberger? Does it help? Does it hurt? It's obviously a good thing that both sides are on the same page to avoid any sort of appellate issues right off the bat.
Yes, and like you said, Tony, it really just goes to all the discovery. It goes to the fact that the prosecution is turning over absolutely everything they have here so that the defense can make whatever claims they want to make about the DNA. There was a hearing earlier in the case where the defense was saying, we don't have everything. You've used other things to rule out or rule in Bryan Kohberger, but we don't have everything, which the prosecution responded, we will give you everything that we have. We have given you everything that we have. If you don't have it, we don't have it. And that's what you really want to see in a case
Mm-hmm.
like this that is a death penalty case that is so serious. You want to see both sides, as you said, being on the same page,
Mm-hmm.
getting all the evidence out there, both sides being able to truly talk about what is there, and the defense, of course, being able to challenge whatever they need here. And that's certainly what they're doing, and it's what they should be doing.
What sort of issues come into play with IgG? Because I know a lot of people have said there's issues in terms of the ways and the means of gathering this sort of evidence and getting from point A to point B. Can you speak to that at all?
I can tell you a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't work on a whole lot of DNA cases, but I did work on some before I left. And, when they are looking at this, like you said, it really is about, um, like we said, having everything out there, knowing exactly what was done in the lab and knowing exactly what they looked at.
Hmm.
And the defense can then go and challenge that and say, well, maybe this particular part of the DNA that you looked at and these particular people that you looked at in getting to Bryan Kohberger is not what you should have to get the match. And they can really just start attacking every little part of using that evidence to get to him.
So are they attacking the actual DNA itself or the merits of the DNA, or is it more so attacking the methods in which to get there? And that point saying, look, you use this method to get here. That's against the rules. That means what you found, even though it's pretty incriminating, you still can't use it.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah.
Particularly Tony, as I know we've talked a lot before, in a case like this when there is such overwhelming evidence, and I have to say, I always think back to you reading it
Mhm.
on air.
Yeah.
And I mean, and really, just there, you didn't even need any commentary.
Hmm.
Just the actual evidence of how they got to him and
Yeah.
how they showed that he was the person who did this is so overwhelming and so strong. So when the defense is going to look at something that's a little bit drier,
Hmm.
like the DNA, they will look at the method
Hmm.
of how they got it. They will look at, were there even things as simple as was there a search warrant? How
Hmm.
did they get when they went to the trash can and they got his DNA?
Yeah.
Was that appropriate? When they got it in another way and matched it, I think from his cheek, was that appropriate? Were
Hmm.
the warrants in place? Was everything done, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's? That is super important. And in a case like this, of course, the prosecution is hopefully doing all of that. But then they can actually, besides just the methods, um, attack the actual evidence, and that's a little different. That's a little more problematic for
Hmm.
them because even with the IgG, even with all of those methodologies coming in, it's pretty straightforward, and that's often what you get with DNA
Yeah.
evidence.
And there is a lot of evidence in this case, and let's talk about some of that
Yeah.
a little bit beyond just the IgG, just beyond the DNA on the knife sheath. That all, that's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out and what, in fact, actually does make it to trial. What I'm always most curious about that we've seen in so many other cases in recent time, that, in my opinion, I've been saying is almost more incriminating than DNA. It's the Google searches. It's what
Yeah.
is in someone's phone because it came directly out of someone's mind. It's
Yeah.
things that are not said aloud. And that's where we find some very, very interesting ways of kind of understanding how that mind worked at the moment that
Mhm.
these crimes took place. We know on the phone records of the triangulation, the pings, where he was at one point in time. We have yet to actually see what the content of the phone actually is in terms of text,
Mm,
Instagram, Google, and all of that. How do you think that will end up
yeah.
playing out?
It makes me think that in this day and age where, certainly someone like you, Tony, is on the air, really laying things out for people, and there's so much kind of true crime out there. There've been so many cases on court TV and otherwise. I'm thinking back to the day of Casey Anthony,
Mhm.
and all of those searches. You would think that if someone was going to commit a crime, they would know
Yeah,
that their Google searches are going to come up. But as we used to say when I was prosecuting, you do not have to prove that the person who committed the crime is smart. And
yeah,
you do not have to prove they did it in a smart way. You just have to prove they did it.
yeah.
And that's really what we have here. It'll be interesting to see what comes up with if there are any postings with all the Google searches and whatever comes up. But honestly, it feels like that's just icing on the cake because where he was and the cell phone location, the triangulation that you've
Mhm.
talked about, where law enforcement is really able to tell exactly where the phone is from how it's pinging off various cell phone towers. Just having that and his car being cited in that vicinity. And also, as I know you and I have talked about, the fact that he turned off the phone,
Yeah.
right? Turned it off.
Yes. Yes.
So, also that showing this kind of consciousness of guilt and trying to hide where he was,
Hmm.
all of that is so overwhelming, and honestly, like, when you read it, so chilling
Yeah.
and so disturbing and so strong to show his intent
Yeah.
and his method of going about this crime and the premeditation and planning that went into it, that I think whatever we get from any Google searches or social media or anything like that, it is just gonna add to it. It's
Yeah.
it's not essential.
I mean, and there's so much that's going to go into this. Uh, in terms of Koberger just presenting himself in a way that's
Mhm.
palatable, I think is what we. I think that's the bar right now. Is palatable. It's not even like let's
Yeah.
present good. Let's this is like present as a normal
Yeah.
human being right now.
Mhm.
I think is the goal. What should they be thinking of in on the defense side right now? Because obviously he doesn't speak a whole lot other than yeses and nos, if he
Mm.
even says that. So a lot of this is visual. And if you're trying to come across to a jury that you're an innocent human being, I mean, what would you be advising a client in some sort of situation like this with this much evidence that's stacked against him?
Well, it is a position, Tony, that I have never had to be in,
Yes,
um, by purposeful decision.
sure.
But obviously, thinking about it, you're talking about him speaking, and of course, as a defense attorney, you don't want him speaking.
Yeah.
You don't want him saying anything. Nothing he says is going to be good for you.
Hmm.
The evidence in this case speaks so strongly; it really speaks volumes. There's nothing he can say that's going to counter it, and all we've kind of had from his attorneys are not even strong alibi evidence in terms of witnesses or any kind of proof, but just he wasn't there, he was driving around, which is not even really an alibi.
Sure.
So when we have kind of heard him speak through his lawyers, it has not really been very beneficial to him. So if I were the defense attorney in this case, if I were truly trying to present him, as you said, palatable, I think is even a high bar here, given the evidence. I think what you really want is no mistakes. What
Mhm.
you really want is just uh, kind of him sitting there, dressed not in his prison garb, but as he can come to court dressed in just regular clothing, sitting at the defense table, not making a lot of hand motions or not making a lot of eye contact with the jurors, maybe a little bit because he wants to kind of show some humanity, but not too much that would make them very uncomfortable because they will know about this case. They will hear about this case. They're going to have some real curiosity coming in,
Sure.
looking at him. So, I think for him to even try to connect with the jury that way is a bit of a dangerous thing. I think what you're really going for is neutral.
Sure.
And what you're really going for is just a neutral, as they're portraying, innocent person sitting there who has been caught in this web of all this evidence. And for them to kind of say, attacking the evidence, but also kind of a two-pronged thing. He didn't do it at all.
Mhm.
And he wasn't there and he didn't do it. but here's all this evidence that says he does. So we also want to say the evidence is no good. Even if you think he did it, the evidence isn't good to show he did it. So they're kind of going with this two-pronged attack, and makes it difficult for a defendant too.
Yeah.
He really just needs to present as almost this neutral, blank slate.
Mhm.
And his attorneys, I think, will probably just very much like we see many defense attorneys do, really attempt to humanize him. There's kind of the hand on the shoulder, there's the pat on the back, there's the looking over sympathetically, there's conferring with him to show that he's part of his defense.
Mhm.
All of those things are really, what they can do without him speaking or doing anything else. That's what they can present,
Mhm.
in a real visual way to the jury.
If you were to make a prediction here, we obviously don't have a date yet for this
Mhm.
trial. I've heard everything. I was talking earlier today with Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI. She's going all the way to 2026 at this point in her
Oh
predictions.
my.
Um,
Okay.
I mean, that seems out there, but she's been right on a lot of these things. Where do you think this is going to land? Is this something we're going to see in late 2024? Or is this going to take more into 25 with all of the motions that are going to be taking place between
Yeah.
now and
I
then?
mean, the original was October, right?
Yeah,
October of
should have been
2023, and
going on
that's
right now. Yeah.
that's long gone.
Yep.
Yeah. Especially with the death penalty case, and especially with all the DNA evidence, especially with everything involved here, I think late 2024 is optimistic. So I'm not sure I'd go to 2026 with a prediction,
Uh
and I am saying for you, please don't put any money on this at all. But late 2024, early 2025 is about where I'd say.
It'll be an interesting year to watch this case.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you want more of our interview with our guests, be sure to check out our podcast, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Just search that wherever you download podcasts and press subscribe. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel for the full video version of the interviews as well, under the same name, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Check it out, subscribe, binge, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.